Welcome to Super Recap. Today I will recap a teen romantic comedy called The Perfect Date. The film starts by introducing us to the main protagonist, Brooks Rattigan. He has many ambitious dreams and aspires to be a prominent public figure in the future. His major goal in life is to change and improve the world. He also especially looks up to his father, who used to be a famous writer once. His best friend Murph is also always by his side and supports him in everything. Murph usually creates apps, while Brooke assists him with. They both also work part-time at Subway together. In the following scene, since Brooke wants to try his hardest to get into a prestigious university, he shows his college essay to the school counselor to make sure it's good enough. The counselor advises that if he wants to get accepted into Yale's, he needs to write a better essay and dig deep into himself. Brooks accepts the advice and leaves. When he's outside, he sees his classmate's expensive car and gets envious. He wishes he had nice cars and a big house too. Later at home, his father suggests he attend a nearby university rather than Yale, as it will be extremely expensive. Brooks then goes to work with Murph and asks his advice on the essay, and Murph encourages him to write about how his mother abandoned him when he was a child. Brooks is upset by the memory, but he ignores it and changes the subject. Suddenly, two of his rich classmates enter the restaurant. Reese is ranting about how he's being forced to be his cousin's dance partner even though he wants to spend the night with his girlfriend instead. His cousin's father, his uncle, is even willing to pay him to take. Brooks thinks this is a great opportunity and tells him that he can take the girl instead. Reese is surprised, but Brooks promises that as long as he gets paid and gets to drive Reese's car, he will take the girl. Reese accepts his offer and hands over his car. In the next scene, we see an overjoyed Brooks driving Reese's car. He's on a call with Murph and excitedly tells him that he'll be getting paid soon. Murph warns him that this is a bad idea, but Brooks isn't bothered because he thinks he's just helping out a girl who doesn't have a date. When he reaches the house, a wealthy and smart-looking man greets. He invites Brooks inside, and Brooks is startled to hear someone having a temper tantrum about not wearing heels. Brooks is extremely confused, but then he sees the girl, Celia, come downstairs in combat boots. When he attempts to introduce himself, she just insults him in return, and while walking to the car, Celia jokes with. She seems like a bold and opinionated girl. During the car ride, Celia tells him to stop and leave her at a bookstore cafe and come back in a few hours. Brooks is puzzled and disagrees with. He tries to convince her and is very insistent about her attending the dance, so Celia eventually gives in and agrees. Soon, they arrive at her posh-looking school, and Brooks takes her to the dance floor and asks her to dance. She's hesitant but listens to him. They have a pleasant time until a slow, romantic song starts to play, and Celia becomes very uncomfortable, but Brooks takes her hand, and they start dancing. While dancing with her, his eyes fall on a very attractive girl across the room, and he can't look away from her. This distraction causes him to accidentally hurt Celia, and Brooks apologizes for his carelessness and gets her an ice pack. Then the attractive girl from earlier approaches them and checks on Celia. She says her name is Shelby and proceeds to invite them to an upcoming party. Brooks eagerly wants to go, but Celia doesn't. Brooks starts liking Shelby a lot, but has to say goodbye to drop Celia home. On the drive home, Celia jokes about how he should make chaperoning rich girls his full-time job, but Brooks takes this idea seriously and believes he can be successful doing that. When he drops her off, Brooks realizes that Celia was never injured. She was just pretending so that they could go home quickly. He's annoyed by this and tells her that he wanted to attend Shelby's party but couldn't because of. Celia also gets annoyed and tells him that he wouldn't fit there anyways because it's for snobbish rich kids. She then leaves in anger. Celia's father then approaches Brooks and gives him the money as promised. Reese also arrives afterward to take his car back. Brooks questions him about how he could buy such an ice car when his parents aren't even that rich. Reese merely states that he worked hard to get it. Brooks then promises himself that he'll also work hard so he can get what he wants. So the following day, he tries to persuade Murph to create an app. At first, Murph doesn't think it's a good idea, but when Brooks explains all the details to him, Murph eventually decides to do it as he thinks it'll benefit both of them. Moments later, Murph's crush walks and Murph tries to keep his calm. Later that night, Murph is finishing up the coding for the app while Brooke waits. Finally, he's done and has created an app that allows the user to select the type of date she wants. It's similar to a delivery service, but for a person instead. Brooks is over the moon and thanks Murph, who jokes, saying that he's like a hooker now. However, Brooke is unhappy with the joke and tells him that he will not get intimate with any of his clients and will only work as a chaperone. Murph then creates another app for him that will allow him to track his progress and check how much he has saved for Yale so far. The next day, his father informs him that he has been awarded a full-ride scholarship to UConn, which is a public university. But Brooks is uninterested in it and tells his dad that he just wants to attend Yale. His father is disappointed by this, and they have a brief argument. Later, Brooks checks out Shelby's Instagram and gets even more infatuated with it. Then he decides to start working on his college essay, but soon he receives a request from the app. Some girl requests him to pretend to be an art nerd for their date, and she is impressed when he does so. The app quickly blows up and he starts receiving all kinds of requests. He goes to parties, tennis practice, dance practices, gives girls advice, and basically anything they request of. He's very popular because he always researches properly and gives the girls exactly what they want. The app is constantly full of requests from girls, and very soon, he starts making a lot of money, and his chances of going to Yale are now looking good. One day, Celia calls him to apologize for her behavior from last time. She then asks him to be her date at Shelby's party so that she can make her crush jealous. Brooke agrees eagerly as he'll get to see Shelby. He then informs her about his app, and they talk about the plan in detail. Later that night, both of them arrive at the party and are welcomed by Shelby. While they talk, Brooks is about to tell her where he lives, but Celia interrupts him and lies, claiming that Brooks is a very wealthy man and lives in a very rich area. Shelby then notices her father flirting with her friend, and she rushes over to pull him away. When they are alone, Brooke asks Celia why she lied, and she replies that if he wants Shelby to like him, he'll have to lie. Just then, they spot Celia's crush. Franklin and Celia get shy, but Brooks takes her with him and strikes up a conversation with Franklin. Once Celia and Franklin start talking comfortably, Brooks is satisfied and gets out of their way. Shelby then initiates a conversation with Brooks, which makes him happy. She thinks that Brooks is extremely wealthy, and he doesn't correct her. After a bit, he returns to Celia with ice cream. She's overjoyed and tells him that she has a date with Franklin later. Brooks is happy for her, and they start planning a public breakup at some other parties so that Celia can date Franklin and Brooks can gain Shelby's sympathy. Brooks then begins to talk about how he wishes he and Shelby could attend Yale's together. Celia remarks that he is only chasing artificial happiness instead of accepting and appreciating himself for who he truly is. Celia then informs him that her father knows the Yale president and that she will ask him to talk with him on Brooks' behalf. Brooks is very thankful and expresses his appreciation. The next morning at work, Murph seems upset by something, and when Brooks inquires about it, he opens up, saying that Brooks has gotten distant from him and that they barely talk now. Brooks realizes that it's true and assures Murph that he will spend time with him soon. The following day, while Brooke is at some rich girl's house, pretending to be what she requested, he gets a call from Celia, who tells him that she has arranged a meeting for him with Yale's head of admission. Celia and Brooks visit Yale's together the next morning, and Brooks is super excited to meet the dean and make a good first impression. Celia tells him not to act so poshly and fake and to just be himself. Since Brooks has been nervous about meeting, he has prepared a lot and has done extensive research on the dean. So when the dean asks Brooks to talk about himself, Brooks makes sure to talk about all the things the dean loves. He even tells the dean that he is a beekeeper, which gets the dean's interest. By the end of the meeting, the dean is very impressed by Brooks, but Celia has overheard their conversation and is unhappy. She confronts Brooks about it and gets very angry when he admits how much he lied. But Brooks thinks she's a hypocrite because she was lying to get Franklin. This makes her even angrier, and she walks away. The car ride is quite awkward, but then Celia suddenly admits that Brooks is right and that she really is a hypocrite since she's afraid to show her real self to anyone. Brooks tries to comfort her and says that it doesn't matter as long as she has confidence in herself. Later that evening, Brooks, Celia, and Murph have dinner together, and when Brooks leaves to make the payment, Murph talks to Celia about how Brooks's mom is actually very rich because she married a wealthy pediatrician, but she does not care about Brooks and is living a happy life herself. He says that even though Brooks doesn't show it, this hurts him a lot. Celia feels sympathy for Brooks when she hears this. After they leave the restaurant, Celia is planning to head to her date with Franklin, and Brooks gets a request on the app and decides to go there even though he had prior plans with Murph. Although Murph is a little upset about it, he lets it go as he knows Brooks really needs the money to go to Yale. During Celia and Franklin's date, Franklin talks about boring things like coffee and music, and despite her disinterest, Celia tries to listen. Then Franklin mentions how similar she and Brooks are, but Celia denies it and says that they will break up soon. Franklin then starts to feel confident and reveals that he is a vandal since he's a graffiti artist that paints on the walls at night. But this winds Celia out. The next morning, Brooks drones on about his last date, but Murph ignores him. Murph then tells him that he was all alone last night and walks away in disappointment. Brooks is surprised but doesn't bother chasing. At night, Brooks calls Celia so that they can sort out how they will break up. Celia listens to him, but it appears that Celia has fallen for him and doesn't want to break up. So before the party, Celia dresses up for the first time and even puts on makeup to impress Brooks. But when she gets in the car, he doesn't even spare her a glance. Instead, he's busy thinking about how they're going to break up. He eventually looks at Celia and compliments her, but it seems he has no affection or feelings for her as he quickly starts talking about their plan once again. Just when they are about to enact their plan, Brooks starts saying insensitive things about Celia. The things he says makes her furious, and she slaps him out of anger and leaves. As soon as she leaves, Shelby appears to comfort Brooks, and they kiss. She then invites him to her formal dance. When he arrives at work the next day, he is ready to tell Murph everything, but when he enters the store, he is surprised to see someone else instead of Murph. Apparently, Murph was really upset and asked his coworker if they could switch shifts as he didn't want to work with Brooks, who is a selfish jerk. Brooks is stunned and a little sad, but he is confident that things will go back to normal soon. Then Brooks gets another request later, and as per the request, he goes on a walk with an old lady. She talks about how she always went on walks with her husband, but she has been lonely ever since he passed away. She then tells him that when you start to love being around someone and are comfortable showing your true self to them, it means you have found the right one. This conversation makes Brooks come to a realization, and he quickly texts Celia, but she ignores him because of all the things he said last time. The night of the formal dance finally arrives, and Brooks takes Shelby to an expensive restaurant first. As they try to converse, Brooks realizes how different they are, and it's hard for them to even hold a conversation with each other. After the dinner date, they go to the dance, where Brooks sees Celia dancing cheerfully and is mesmerized by her. Then a girl approaches Brooks and asks for his advice. When she starts talking about his app, Shelby asks Brooks about it, and he finally reveals to her that he's not rich and that he has the app so that he can save up enough money to go to Yale. Shelby is extremely unhappy and leaves him, but Brooks is unbothered. He finally realizes all his mistakes and approaches Celia. They make small talk and discuss how their crushes weren't even their type. Celia then admits she likes Brooks, but she isn't going to be his second option. Brooks understands her and returns home unhappy. When his father asks him why he's down, he confesses everything and tells his dad that he has lost himself and has no idea who he is now. His father proceeds to give him some excellent advice, which makes Brooks realize what he needs to do. At night, when he gets another request, he declines it. He meets up with Murph the next morning and tells him everything. They have a sweet conversation, and their friendship is saved. Murph then also decides to finally ask his crush out. Brooks is pleased with his current situation. He checks how much money he has saved up and starts working on his college essay. Later, he contacts Celia and calls her to a cafe where he informs her that he will not apply to Yale and instead he has already accepted UConn's offer because he's not going to pretend to be someone he's not anymore. He then gives her a letter and leaves. In the letter, he confesses his feeling. He lets her know that when he's with her, he can be himself. He also asks her out. Meanwhile at home, it turns out that Brooks' father has also been offered a wonderful job. During that happy moment, he receives a request on the app, which he immediately denied, but the person keeps spamming him. He then realizes what's happening and goes to the door. When he opens the door, Celia is there, and she apologizes for hitting him and asks him out on another dance. They get in the car, but instead of taking him to the dance, Celia takes him to his workplace. Brooks is surprised to see the place all decorated and that Murph and his crush are also there. Murph happily reveals that he's going to UConn too. Celia and Brooks then share a romantic moment where Brooks expresses how happy he is, and then they kiss. The movie ends with all four of them having fun and enjoying their time together. Thanks for watching. To support the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button and press the bell icon to get new video updates.